Welcome to the Property and Coffee Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Atkinson.
I'm Matt Skehan.
We'll be fueling your financial future one coffee and property insights at a time.
Helping you navigate the property market like a pro.
Hello, and what a pleasure it is to have your company on the Property and Coffee Podcast, where we're going to be fueling your financial future one coffee and property insights at a time. I'm your host, Matt Atkinson, joined by my co-host, Matt Skehan. Today, we're chatting with Matt Duker, the Director of Conveyancing Excellence. Buying property is often one of the biggest financial commitments of a person's life, yet sometimes, or for most people, the legal engine room can be a bit of a mystery in this process. What we're going to do today is we're going to pull back the curtain and help you understand the world of settlements, contracts, and making sure you've got legal protection when it's necessary. We'll be covering off several themes: the conveyancer's role in a property transaction, why you should be getting a contract review, and some of the red flags to be aware of during the process. Let's get into it.
Well, thanks for coming on, Matty. So if two Matts wasn't enough, three is sort of the Triple M.
Three's a crowd.
Triple M podcast today.
Yeah,
but it's really good to have you on, Matt. So
thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure, mate. So obviously the Property and Coffee podcast. It wouldn't be our podcast without where's your favourite coffee and what are we ordering for you, mate?
Look, I go to Gilbert's down there on Centre Road in Bentley.
Yep.
So it's a couple of doors up from my office. Beautiful. And big shout out to the guys there. They make a beautiful coffee. A latte is my preference. Probably after that, I like the old C&R Cafe. They do a good iced coffee. They're just down there on Beach Road in Bowie.
Oh yes, yes, I know. Yeah, that's in my hood. So no, that's good. They make very good coffee. So it's important, I think, to have an office near coffee, lifestyle. So
definitely,
it's a good place to meet and greet and keep your clients and yourself and your staff caffeinated. So
it's essential,
mate. Absolutely. So.
Matty, Matt Duker, that is. We're gonna hop straight into it. So look, we'll start off first. For many buyers, a conveyancer is someone they may only hear from. Typically at the end of a deal or transaction that's gone through. Can you just walk us through what you actually do from the moment a client finds a property?
What do you do, mate? What do you do, Matty?
To the moment keys are handed over. So just people really understand how you are intricately involved in that process.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, probably the way to answer that best is we act for both vendors and purchasers. So vendors, they're sellers of property. So in that context, we basically prepare the contract of sale for them. We would make sure that the disclosure statement, the Section 32, is correct and contains all the documents that are necessary to make a really, secure contract.
Yes.
We then take the matter through to settlement. Once the agent's done their job of selling the property for them, we would look after everything from beginning to ending. So we're talking about arranging the discharge of the mortgage that's over the property. We're talking about just bringing the client through the whole process of understanding what they need to do, which isn't a whole lot because we kind of handle everything so that they can just sit back, relax, and just be guided by us. So we adjust all the rates on a property. We make sure, and ultimately, that the vendor gets their money that's due to them under the contract. So that's it on a sales side. On a purchase, it's kind of the flip side. So we often get involved before someone actually signs a contract. Is usually the preferred method. And so we'd look at the contract, we'd give them advice, we'd go through that with them, and then should they be successful in securing the property, we then take that through to settlement for them. So there's transfer documents, there's, again, adjustment of rates, there's liaising with all the parties, the vendor's legal representative, the client's bank, and ultimately
finance conditions.
Very important stuff, as you would appreciate, and ultimately making sure the purchaser gets onto the title to the property. I mean, that's really the whole purpose.
Slightly important
of conveyancing to convey the property onto the title that the client has actually secured the property for. So then we notify all the authorities after it's all done and dusted, so that they're aware. The council, water, owners, corporation. You awake still?
I am. Riveting.
No, but it's. I'm not going to change careers. I love what I do, so it's essential. You guys are essential as a buyer's agent, but no offense, you can have your role. Like as I said, Matty can be. I'll stick to my lane, but no, it's It's very essential. It's important because ultimately we joke about it, but obviously you're spending a lot of money. There's a lot of risk, and if things aren't handled properly, that's a nightmare, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's caveat emptor, which means buyer beware.
Yeah.
So you absolutely got to protect, and you need people in your corner. Otherwise, it's you're up the creek without the paddle.
It's good to see that he's upskilled on his Latin as well.
On his Latin,
very impressive, Matt.
No. It was a Hobie boy, and I think it says on court there was a few Latin stuff. So back in the day, but I'm a bit rusty. But hopefully don't test me on my Latin today. So anyway, you're in the hot seat, mate. We've got the iPad, so
you're asking the questions.
Exactly right, mate. Exactly right. So after years of you've been doing a job for a long time, is there any like vibe or a red flag, or you see a contract, it's the average punter, like I've seen a lot as well, but where you just know that there might be something going on there? Is there, like, I suppose a tidbit for, we don't want people to DIY their conveyancing, that's quite silly, but just just a little tidbit. Is there something that you see as because you've looked at thousands, really, would I imagine? So
I look at
too many.
I look at about probably 5 a day for a client. 5 a day. Yeah. Okay. So I've been doing this for 27 years now.
So 5 a day. Obviously a leave. Like that's a lot of. I can't even do the maths, right? Yeah, like you're the broker. Right. That's a lot of. That's a lot of contracts.
You're looking like 5,000 contracts.
Yeah, a lot of different practitioners, and different practitioners have different contracts, different special conditions.
Correct.
Probably to answer your question very simply, company share, stratum title. Yep. These are the ones that
I think. For that person at home, like a lot of people won't have heard of this. Yeah. Like what does that mean simply?
Okay, yeah. So a company share title, very, very popular in Balaclava or St Kilda.
So I lived in Elwood originally, and there was some company share in Elwood. I remember seeing one of the properties on Broadway there, beautiful street. My wife and I loved Art Deco, and I came across, this is when I'm a physio, this would have been 2011. And company share, So
we'd have a few probably clients in that building that you're talking about.
Yeah, we didn't buy that one, but
okay.
I learned all about it because the finance was different. So,
and that's exactly it, because some lenders won't lend
correct
on. And Matt would know this very well, on company share properties, stratum titles as well, a lower LVR.
Stratums.
Oh, they're around.
Yeah. Where do you see them mainly? What sort of areas?
2 or 3 a year, I'd say, where we secure a client would actually buy one and we'd look after that for them. A similar sort of situation where you own to the inside walls. So your company share title, you don't actually own the title. You go on there.
Shares in a company that own the freehold. So it's not a strata, which is which I think most people, and to be honest, when you ask as a buyer's agent, you ask a sales agent these questions, they generally have no idea, right? Sometimes we pick it up when we look at Cotality or some of those softwares will, instead of saying SP or strata plan, we might be able to pick it up with some of our DD. But often, no offense, but the agents don't know themselves.
Right. That's not their job too necessarily.
It's a junior agent sometimes selling these apartments.
Yeah,
and they're not that experienced, and they don't know until they get a contract. So it's and I think if you're a new buyer, new agent, sort of sometimes the blind leading the blind. Until they get you guys involved.
Exactly right.
And then obviously the broker's like, hang on, your 5% home deposit scheme doesn't work on this one or whatever.
Yeah, it is. Those things are very important because as you pointed out, right, not every lender is going to be, putting up their hand to lend against that type of title. So it does mean we just need to make sure we understand what the earlier the better, so we can help prepare for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in terms of the contract review trap, so like obviously as an advocate, we would never buy or advise a client to put an offering without you guys reviewing it. But I know not everyone gets a building report, so I imagine people wing it. And do you see people who come to you after not having a review? And I suppose, like, firstly, why is it important to get a contract review before you sign?
Yeah,
not after the fact. But I can't imagine that. But I'm sure you'd have some stories where people come to you and say, Matt, now this is your problem. Well, they don't even know there's a problem yet because they're ignorant. But they've, I'm sure you've got some stories.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got stories. I've been in it a long time, so I've got a lot of stories I could share. But I remember one time a client walked into my office, and he's an artist, and he
shouldn't laugh, but he
didn't quite dress like a guy that you'd think sort of 20 years ago could afford to buy a $2 million house. But indeed he had. And he said, here you go, Matt, this is what I bought for my wife on the weekend. It was all unconditional. It was bought at auction. So that's the end of it. So there's not a lot we could do with that one. And, in that context, maybe he got lucky. There wasn't anything particularly worrying about that contract. But every day I'll look at a contract and I'll find issues with it. I'll find issues. I looked at one this morning where there was basically inadequate insurance in the Section 32 for a strata plan. There's so many things that I can find, and that's my job, to find the issues that a normal buyer or person's just not going to find, so that they're aware and that they feel then confident about what they're doing. And knowledge is power, right? You know, when
Correct.
someone feels knowledgeable and they feel like, I know what I'm doing, and that's why, you know, they have a really good buyer's agent as well, you know, because you know all these things that they just don't know, and you're able to use your professionalism, experience to be able to help them to make a good decision. And it's a bit like that in our space. You know, we share things with them that are going to save them money. They're going to stop them and prevent them from having a disaster, and really from, you know, getting a shock, whether it's a financial shock, you know, it's the owner's corporation fees or the levy that's going to get struck next week or after settlement that's going to cause them, you know, some financial headaches, or it could be a caveat that, you know, is an issue, or a covenant. I could go on. We might get to some of these points a bit later.
But just on that really quickly before we go to Matt A, we had a client recently, a home buyer with a tightish budget in the 400,000s and all sorts of issues with apartments built in 2000 to sort of now. And one of them had a levy that was going to be $60,000 per unit. So and that's obviously the cladding issues, water ingress. So like, again, even our client was actually trying to find a reason if I can get this a discount to buy it, but it had legal, like we obviously talked them out of it because legal action, uncertainty, like why would you inherit a headache? But I think people will, my 2 cents is you must see a conveyancer. Like you wouldn't, well, you know, people take more time researching a television or a new iPhone,
So
right?
true.
Like you, if you're going to buy a $2 million house, you should probably talk to you definitely should talk to someone. Otherwise, you never know. Like you could be fine, but on the occasion you're not fine, that could be enough to, you know, cause a lot of pain.
I mean, even if you're a first home buyer and, you know, you're saving up all your life for that $400,000 apartment, that's all your money.
Yeah,
and
you
so
don't want to
you
throw
want
it
to
away.
protect that, and that's where we sort of come in to do that.
I think people, it's an important job. So.
Maddie, what we might do, just on that theme, is let's touch on a couple of examples across different themes where people might find themselves, where we can just unpack a bit more where people have got the contract reviewed or they haven't, and just what, you know, potential nightmares or disasters might have been mitigated on the back of that. So we'll start with the auction scenario, which is, you know, as you would appreciate in Victoria, it's a hugely popular way of someone looking to sell the house. So we often see, you know, buyers get caught up at auctions in the emotion of the occasion. It's a big occasion, especially if you're bidding for yourself. You want to buy, you know, potentially your family home. So people might be looking to, you know, bid 10 or 20% over the reserve just to secure their property. Can you share where someone's proactively approached yourself and they've asked for a pre-auction review where potentially their dream home has suddenly got some deal breakers that they might be undisclosed easements or any restrictive covenants that might turn this into a bit of a legal nightmare if they were to proceed with the purchase?
Yeah. But you sort of led me into the answer to that question, Matt. So probably the one that just springs to mind in the moment is a client of mine called Nathan. He's got a really good plumbing business. He's very successful. He's got, you know, a lot of guys around him and he's built that up over the journey. And he was looking for an investment property that he was going to, in Bayside, look to develop, be it, I think, a 2 or a 3 lot subdivision. And, you know, Nathan's a very good plumber. He's a pretty cluey guy, but he said, look, Matt, I need you to have a look at this before the auction. And, you know, it's a couple of $1 million in Beaumaris he was going to sort of lay down on the land. So he wanted that looked at. So, and in fact, in that one, yes, there was a restrictive covenant that was prohibiting him from having a second dwelling on the land. So covenants, for anyone that might be listening or watching that doesn't know what a covenant is, it's just basically a restriction on the land. So they can vary from soil removal. You can't remove soil unless you're building, to, you know, you can't have a pottery ware business or run a business from there, or maybe even, particularly for Nathan, you can't develop the site You can have covenants lifted or withdrawn, but it is a pretty expensive and long drawn out process to do that. And a bit like what Matt was saying before, for a buyer who's got lots of different options, usually, whether it's this one, that one, or the other one over down the street, particularly if it's an investment, you're not as emotionally attached. You may be just better to, if it doesn't fit the parameters, just move on, find something else.
Yeah, we stand down if we see us. In that scenario, we would stand down because yes, you might be able, but it's the costs and the unknown, the uncertainty. It's just a lot of risk, right? There's other sites that don't have that, so you're just adding complexity. Your client being a plumber, right? Like you don't want to have to do a 3.5 twist off the 10 meter, So and you can. So it's how to lose money too, as well, because there is that unknown, and then you inherit a property that really, if it's a development site but it can't be developed, it doesn't really have a highest and best use. So it's sort of, I think that's where it's important to, because most people don't understand what the covenant is. Some of those examples, these covenants are old school with pottery and excavation works and quarry stuff. So they're very old school. They're written in, can't even read them almost. So they're back in the day. So, you need advice.
They go back to the 1800s, something like 1898 and these sorts of things, but yet they're still registered on title.
Yeah, and they're in the contract.
So they're relevant. They're still applicable, to the land that's being sold.
And as you say, they might be lifted or you might be able to be successful, but it's also a process where you don't have a guaranteed outcome. So it might take you months, years before a decision's even made.
Yeah.
Mate, there's the one winners out of all these things, the lawyers, mate, because they can fight them. But I'm just kidding. We love our lawyers. We love our lawyers. So it's somewhat necessary in occasions. But so Matty D, unconditional. So is there anything you think that you've stepped in to review a contract where because often as an advocate, I think a lot of the times there's not like deal breaker stuff, but there's sort of minutiae that you might change. But I'm sure you would have seen, been doing it for so long. I'm sure you've seen terms that are so onerous that you would potentially not recommend a buyer to proceed, or I don't know. Is there any examples you can think of that are so heavily favoured or not favoured, not fair? Have you seen any examples?
Yeah, I remember one. This actually does go back. A few years now, but this was prepared, I believe, by a buyer's advocate, and this particular buyer's advocate, it wasn't you, Matt.
No, it wasn't. Jesus, I'm not going to turn into a conveyancer in my spare time, which is limited. I'll stick to other pursuits, mate, not conveyancing.
And I believe that the buyer's advocate was also the vendor's advocate. So he had a bit of an issue there. But what was in the contract, which my client was really gung-ho about buying, and I had to kind of say, hey, do you realise this? And really just, I don't make decisions from our clients. It's our client who makes the decision. We're just there to provide the information and then let them, on the basis of that information, make a decision that's good for them. And in this instance, well, you had to use their legal practitioner that they recommended as opposed to anyone.
Is it the advocate or who is it? Is one person who's like that?
It was pretty bad. And then they were going to get all these works done to the property and you had to use their building people to go through. So, and there was also going to be a buyer's advocate finding fee on top of the fact that this guy was actually also getting a fee from the vendor.
How long ago was this, mate?
This could be 10, 12 years ago.
I was going to say, hopefully it's not recently.
Look, you'd like to think not.
There's a few like integrity issues going on here.
We won't name names, Matt.
No. We're not here to do that. But but I think the key thing is, you need an expert. Because obviously, because you're not, unless you know what you're looking for, and as I said, if it's that odd, you're not going to notice even the difference. But like for you, it's just like, geez, that's French.
There was alarm bells ringing. Yeah,
I'd imagine there would be. That'd be an interesting contract to see that one.
But it is also hard, even if someone's, they're a professional and have the expertise across those areas, to have a sort of a degree of separation. I mean, and man, to your point, right? You hope you see it less. We had one recently where we had a friend, an accountant who doesn't use, but he'd approached and he wanted to do his accounting. He also wanted to sell him a property and then do the finance for him. Yeah. And not that his business was big enough to do that, but he was operating as a single operator and, probably would do the legal work if he had the opportunity. And you kind of go and you say, fine, maybe this is a unicorn, but typically there's just too many perceived conflicts of interest there where you do need to just sort of separate them.
Yeah. I've seen that over the years too, and off the plan stock, but anyway, then some other off the plan stock can be really good. It just depends. Leave that to the expert.
If you ever see a rental guarantee or something,
yes.
if you need a guarantee, it's generally because it won't stack up on its own, right? So like it's that's a bit of a flag. There's other ones as well, but if someone's free, no one's free, right? So if I'm free as an advocate, I'm not free. I'm being paid by the developer. You're going to be paying that. So no one works for free. And if there's a guarantee, they're my two. Like they smell a bit funky, right? Like there's generally there's going to be something under that, right? So like if it's a good property, it doesn't need a guarantee. But if it's a dud, it does, because they want to suck you in, and when you're in, you can't get out, because as you know, it's not easy. So that's my 2 cents.
Especially if you've got like a rental guarantee where it might influence
inflated, mate. It's often inflated,
but also it influences the value of the property.
Correct.
That's a factor in that, you know.
Yeah, and see that in commercial as well, where it's, cap rates is heavily there. So you do hear that a little bit as well, where people are a bit unsophisticated and they get suckered into it, and they overpay, because obviously cap rate affects the value. So in commercials, so it's just you know, do your research, buy beware, right? So get an expert, or or just hope it and wish that, you know, it's up to you, right? It's your money. So, yeah.
Maddie, we'll move on to one other example that we want to say in the space you might see a little bit of is obviously people now, there's a bit of a, I want to call it a renovation trend, where people might be looking to, you know, improve where they're living, and that might extend where they're putting on things like decks or studios that potentially is not on the property plan. So could you tell us where you've looked at a proposed purchase deal where these unrecorded works or hidden structures have been part of the deal, and that's, you know, obviously presented your client with a decision to either get this rectified or potentially walk away from the transaction?
It's funny you mention it, Matt, because it happens. You're not going to believe this, but every day I look at a contract prepared by a professional, and yet the disclosure isn't actually correct, and it worries me. When I'm reviewing a contract for a purchaser, I'm going to go on realestate.com. I'm going to have a look at the photos. I'm going to have a look at the property. I'm going to then compare that to what is actually on the title, and also, you know, what disclosures have been made about building permits, and the key one is cosmetic renovation works. And that's the one that, you know, post-COVID, the government's sort of everyone decided they were going to, you know, that we're in lockdown, and
the garage into a living room,
exactly,
the home studio. You go in there, and there's a lot of home work. So
and there's a lot of, you know, new kitchens that get put in, new bathrooms. You know, we're all wanting to update and renovate and make our properties the best they can be, and there's nothing wrong in that. But if you do that as a vendor, you've got to make the proper disclosure. And every day I see contracts that don't have the proper disclosure. And if I'm acting for our vendors, we've got to just keep them honest and advise and let them know, hey, this is the law. It's not coming from me. This is the legislation. And to protect you, you just got to do the right thing. And then you don't have any stress. But when I'm acting for a buyer, well, it gives us opportunity, you know, and you've got to let your client know that, do you realize you could actually pull out of this contract even after it's signed? Because the incorrect disclosure has been given, and that's potentially very dangerous. So it's good knowledge and power to have if you're a purchaser, to go into an auction knowing that, well, if I really want to, I could actually, you know, pull that lever. But most people, though, when they want to buy a property, they end up going through with it, and happily so. But it's just about understanding those risks and understanding what disclosure is required.
So just on that, so I think for the average buyer, like it's what we call an owner builder, or 137B. So as an advocate, we see these a lot. So they're not always in there, but they should be. So if they've done some owner builder works over 16,000, so it's in the contract. But as you know, if you're working for the vendor, you're going to make sure they're in there, because otherwise you're not doing your job properly. I know you do your job properly, but there's some not all conveyancers are equal.
And some don't know. I think I see
scary
this.
if they don't know, because what are you paying for? That's
I know.
There is obviously, well, some of them are probably lacking, because obviously it's sometimes a race to the bottom in fee, isn't it? And you know, and that's where you've got to pick your people based on making sure that they know what they're doing, because, you know, sometimes the cheapest agent, we say, in real estate might be the most expensive, cheapest conveyancer or broker rate. Like, you know, fee's not everything. Like, it's service, it's knowledge, because otherwise these are like, because you could have someone, I've heard someone, you know, with an agent in Chelsea Heights a few years ago, where another agent, literally someone walked away because they couldn't get bridging finance the day before settlement because a 137B wasn't disclosed. So, and that was a junior agent, you know, and that happened. So, like, sometimes, you know, in the current climate, you know, if people need a way out, and you've given them one, like they might take it. So,
And it's not just the 137B, it's also the warranty insurance
Correct.
that comes with it. So
Yep.
if it's within 2 years
Yep.
and it's over 16 grand, then there's got to be
Yep.
warranty insurance. And most most vendors, they go, but I didn't do the project. I got 5 trades in, and that, yes, but the law sees you as an owner builder in that context. So it's just a matter of educating your clients, and everyone then is happy.
Yeah.
Good point. Maddie, we're going to cover off insurance, title insurance to be specific, which can be often misunderstood or potentially overlooked. Can you just give us a bit of a rundown as to the hidden dangers, one, this covers off, and why it should be a non-negotiable for people?
Well, it really leads into that previous question. So title insurance can be very helpful to a purchaser when they buy a property for lots of reasons. But firstly, it's a one-off payment. You pay it once. And then it lasts until you sell the property. So, it can last for decades. And it can be helpful in terms of if your measurements are out, the fences are in the wrong spot. Land is a very valuable asset to have, particularly, in most of our suburbs throughout Melbourne. So you want to make sure that, if those fences are wrong and your neighbour comes to you and says, hey, we've got to move the fence. And you say, but hang on, that's where my garage is. You could have a problem. So title insurance can kick in there. And we recommend it to all of our buyers, particularly if we've got a house to secure that, because it's land is valuable and title insurance will take care of that headache for you, the legal side of it. Illegal structures, is another area that we've just been chatting about, these decks and all that sort of stuff.
So many decks that are, you can tell, right? They don't have the railing or the height, like they're just, you can tell they've been a bit, they haven't really gone through the correct channels.
Yep.
So if you're going to rent them out too, like if something happens, like you're liable, right? So
or extensions, people do extensions without getting building permits. They're called illegal structures, and the council maybe 5 years later might find out about it and issue a building order notice on that particular purchaser, and he goes, well, I didn't even do the works, it was the guy before me. Well, the law doesn't see it like that. You've got to actually then rectify those works. So title insurance will help pay for that. And I've got a really good story on my website of a client that had a veranda, and it leaked sort of some months after they'd purchased it, and the title insurer came to the party and really looked after them.
Have they had a building inspection?
They may have on that one. It was a few years ago.
Yeah, no,
I can't recall.
I'm just curious because obviously title insurance, like of your clients, like roughly, what percentage uptake you reckon?
I reckon on a house probably 60.
Okay.
Or so percent.
So majority, or sort of. Okay.
We'd certainly recommend it. Yeah, because it's just
it's a peace of mind. It's a one-off.
Yeah.
And it's a big asset. Particularly with house prices these days.
Yeah.
Like, the average house price is $1 million, like and upwards. So it's
right.
a small price to pay for peace of mind, and you just never know, right? Like if next door is going to develop or something, and all of a sudden there's a dispute over stuff, like it can easily it can escalate costs quite quickly. So
just helps you sleep at night.
Does help.
Just like you, Maddie, with your young kids, mate, you'll be sleeping well, mate.
That's it, mate.
30 Ks.
When they're asleep, I'm asleep.
Who do you think gave him this haircut?
The lawnmower. No, but we're just going to finish with a couple of quickies out there, Matty D. So, for those listening, eyeing a property this weekend, like obviously, what point does it become too late to get you involved? Like we've talked about a few things before. I think you might have answered it, but just a tidbit for when should they ideally? When would you like someone to see you?
Okay.
Not when it's. How people come to you, it's they wanted it yesterday.
Friday at 4:00.
Yeah, Friday. Yeah,
you'd be surprised. Happens every week.
I imagine. But ideal world, when would you love, if someone's listening and they go, I'm looking at a property, when should they reach out to you and say, when's the right time?
Well, really when they've decided I want to buy a property.
Yep.
That's the time to reach out to us.
So a specific property, you're saying they've got a specific property in mind or just a property?
Not necessarily. Look, maybe they've gone and seen Matt and gotten a pre-approval and decided that they want to embark on the journey, and that's the time to engage with myself or our team so that we can really help from that time on. It's just part of our service. So you may as well engage us early rather than late.
Rather than, sort of be proactive rather than just reactive. And as you said, 4:00 on a Friday, so this auction tomorrow and look at it. It's your problem, so, drop everything for me, so, yeah.
Also, if you got that, like anything, right? If you already got that relationship, it makes it much easier to come and say, you've done the introductions, they know what's expected. Property comes up, they can just flick you the contract and say, hey, I want to go to auction and we want to look at this. and you at least have already got that vested interest and you can move that along.
Absolutely.
Maddie, just to round out this podcast, so if someone was looking at a contract of sale and they wanted to go ahead looking towards an auction, they haven't gone ahead and got a pre-auction review through yourself, but just talking generally, and you said, what are sort of 3 major red flags people should be aware of that might suggest that, hey, look, we should look to a professional and engage them because there might be some problems here?
Yep. So the company share scenario, the title type is probably a big one. Covenants that we've addressed. Easements are another one where you've got pipes under the ground and you can't build over them. You know, if you want to extend, that becomes relevant. So they're probably the big 3 that I'd sort of share with you. And yeah, but there's lots and lots of others. You know, I have a lot of clients that say to me, hey, Matt, can you take a quick look at this? And look, I'm not a doctor, all right, but it's a bit like saying to your doctor, hey, can you just have a quick look over me? Well, no, scans have to be done, tests have to be undertaken, and it's a little bit like that with contracts. And the devil's in the detail. There's a lot of different things. It's not necessarily also about what's in it. It's about, well, what's not in it? What should be in it? What should you know? And these are the things we like to try and help our clients through.
I think that's a really good point, because you do see, I think these days with some budget conveyances, like there's a lot of stuff that's not disclosed. And so you're not, really informed, right? Like, and it could be innocent, but it also could be a little bit more sinister, and they haven't disclosed a lot of stuff. So not all contracts are prepared equally. I think that's the key. And I think even just what you've said, if you don't understand easements, covenants like that, like you shouldn't be DIYing it. Get an expert. Like, you wouldn't, if you're not a builder, you're not going to probably start renovating your own house. If you're an accountant, you're not going to probably do your own taxes, right? Like, get an expert. Like, it's a big investment. Like, every client, we never buy without a review. I think it's pretty silly without it. Like, you're playing with fire.
Yep. That's right.
And it's a lot of money, regardless if you're funding it cash or the bank's helping.
I'm finding a lot of clients are actually coming to me and saying, hey, I've chat GPT'd this review. Here it is. What do you think of that review? And what do you think of the contract? But it's not going to necessarily get into the nitty-gritties of things that they don't know about or that should be in the documents that are not.
Well, they don't know how to prompt it. I think there's all sorts of issues with that, right? So
And look, it has its place. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't substitute, what a professional can bring to the table and really help you in that whole journey.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Well, thanks, mate.
Thank you. Thank you for being a part of the Property and Coffee podcast. It's been fantastic having you on and sharing a bit around your insights and how you help buyers and sellers in the market.
Thank you. Thanks so much, guys.
Oh, thanks, Matty. Appreciate it.
I just want my coffee now.
If you would like to keep receiving property insights and golden nuggets from our guests, please do follow us and you'll get the latest episode released on a fortnightly basis.